Hello, everyone. Welcome back to our series of lessons on the Anglo-Saxons and 1066 and the change into the Normans. So we are really far forward in our story now. You can see on the board we're in 1064 now, so we're only 2 years away from the Battle of Hastings. And today we're going to look at why did Harold Godwinson go to Normandy in 1064? And one of the things I think makes the Anglo-Saxon topic so interesting is there are so many bits where we're just not sure. So sources will have had to survive for over 1,000 years. There are lots of holes in our story, and what that means is we get to come up with our own hypothesis. We get to suggest different things that could be the reason, but we don't know for sure. And one of our big questions we have, why did Harold Godwinson go to Normandy? We know he goes, we know they've got the visit, we've got sources on that, but why is debated. And there are two different stories. One side's lying, the other side's telling the truth. We don't know who it is. So first up, I'm going to tell you the story. So the story of his visit. And the main source of information we have is the Bayeux tapestry. So technically it's not actually a tapestry, it's an embroidery, but it was done by Anglo-Saxon women after the Battle of Hastings on the orders of Normans, and it tells the whole story. It is apparently coming to England next year, so if you get a chance to go and see it, it's really incredible that this piece of material has survived 1,000 years. So we have to be a bit careful with it. It is the Norman version of events, but there are some things in it that back up other sources. So we know that Harold set sail to France. So the King of England at the time in 1064 was who? Think to yourself, pause the video if you need to. Well done, everyone who said Edward the Confessor. So, Edward the Confessor, remember he's half Norman. His mother is a Norman, Emma of Normandy. And Edward the Confessor grew up in Normandy. So, he is Norman in lots of ways. So, he speaks Norman French, he has Norman culture. And so, the links between England and Normandy were huge. So, the Confessor sends people he trusts over to Normandy with messages, and we can see there he's chosen to send Harold Godwinson. So, Harold Godwinson set sail to France on the orders of the King Edward the Confessor. Um, where he gets kidnapped. Harold has such an interesting life. It's never a dull moment if you are Harold Godwinson. So he's sailing over the channel. There is a huge storm. He is shipwrecked and then lands in the area controlled by Guy of Ponthieu. So he doesn't appear in our story, Count Guy. He again, he just sort of pops up here in our story as the villain that kidnaps Harold and then disappears. So learning his name is really going to make you stand out to the examiner. So poor Harold gets kidnapped by Count Guy of Ponthieu, but luckily for Harold, is rescued by William of Normandy. So the Battle of Hastings 1066 is going to be Harold Godwinson versus William of Normandy. Potentially they've met before. They're both very important men, but if not, this is when they are meeting. And William goes to Count Guy and is like, here, you've kidnapped Harold Godwinson, cut it out. So William of Normandy is that I've got really close links with Edward the Confessor. They're sort of first cousins once removed. So William goes and is that Harold's been sent by my cousin to see me, hand him over. So Harold gets released. And then Harold and William spend a lot of time just hanging out. So we know they take part in a couple of campaigns together. We know they go hunting together and they get on really well, which actually, if we think about it, isn't a surprise, is it? Because they have so much in common. These are two very intelligent, strong warriors, same interests. So they are sort of natural friends. 2 years down the line, they're going to be fighting each other at the battle, but when they meet now, they see each other's strengths and good points. And this is where the Bear Tapestry, the full story ends. William gives Harold armour. Now, this is important because giving armour was a traditional gift from a lord to his subject. So it implies that William is the sort of the higher person, if that's the phrase I'm using, in this friendship. It's not an equal friendship. William holds a higher position, which would make sense because he is Duke of Normandy. Harold, remember, is an earl. He's Earl of Wessex. So a duke outranks an earl. So it implies that William is in the higher role. He's got the more prestigious role. So far, we know that that's what happened. Now the story goes a bit different. So the Normans have their version, the Saxons have theirs. So I'm going to give you the Norman version first. So the Norman version says this. We're still in the Bear Tapestry. That Harold, you can see him there in the yellow cloak, kind of in the middle, stands in front of William and the whole court, and he puts a hand each on a holy object. So it's called a holy relic, holy object. And he swears an oath that when Edward the Confessor dies, William will become king and Harold will support him. So the reason he's holding holy objects is you've got like promises, but then you've got promises made whilst holding holy objects, which like super holy. So the promise absolutely can't be broken. Harry Potter fans, it's a bit like the unbreakable vow. So you make someone a promise, you really shouldn't break it. You make someone a promise holding holy relics, you definitely are not breaking that. So that's the Norman version. That Edward the Confessor said to Harold, go over to Normandy, tell William he's my heir. When I die, he will be king, and promise to back him. Okay, that's what the Normans say happened. So we can see there William sat on the throne holding the sword, and everyone's kind of pointing at Harold, who is swearing his oath. So if you're a Norman, that's what you think happened. The Saxons are like, absolutely not. That never happened. Yes, there was a visit, but nobody made any promise about the throne. It wasn't even talked about. They say Howard was there to just collect his younger brother and nephew who were in Normandy. So the Saxon version, they're like, absolutely not. That never happened. Howard was just popping over to pick up his family members and then he was going to go back. So the younger brother and nephew are there as hostages. Now, we just need to touch on what hostages is. This is such a horrible part of the course. So, Anglo-Saxon and Norman times, at this time, people would make oaths to each other. They'd make promises, and sometimes they would break them, and that was a real problem. So, they come up with a solution to that problem, which is hostages. So, if an adult makes a promise to do something to someone else, whilst that person's waiting, they hand over their children. So you promise to do something for someone. In the meantime, you give them one of your children. And the deal is, if you break your promise and you don't do what you said you did, they can kill your child. Just mind blowing. Sometimes the poor unfortunate child wasn't killed. Sometimes they would maim them, which was injure them. So they would cut off hands or feet. They would cut out eyes. Or so the idea was you would keep your promise because you knew if you broke it, your child would be killed. There is also some unfortunate stories of people giving hostages, knowing full well that they are not going to be getting them back. So really unlucky. If you're a child at this time, you better hope your parents are not making promises, or that if they are and you're a hostage, that they are going to keep them. So this is the Saxon version. So Harold's younger brother and nephew, two children of the family, were sent over to Normandy as hostages. Harold Godwinson, his family, had kept their word. They'd done whatever it was they promised to do. So now he's going over to pick them up. So when you fulfill your promise, you get your children back. Okay, so really important that we know both versions. Norman version, Harold was there to promise William the throne. Saxon version, Harold's just there to pick up some family members who are hostage. We don't know which one is true. One of them is lying, the other one isn't. We have no way, unless some source gets unearthed that tells us. At the moment, we have no idea who the liar is. So, final thing, what can we learn from this? Why is this important? So, even though there are big questions and there are some things we don't know, there are other things we can tell from this. So, number one, Harold was Edward's trusted advisor. Edward the Confessor is trusting Harold to go on important missions. So going to someone else's court, even if you are just picking up hostages, nothing more important than that, it's still an important job. So it's going to Harold, his trusted advisor. William uses this as his claim to the throne of England. So William says Edward the Confessor promised him the throne. It isn't unlikely that that is true. So, like I said earlier, Edward the Confessor grows up in Normandy. William's father is Edward's first cousin, but they're brought up together as brothers in the same household. They are best friends. They have a really close relationship. So, William's father has died. But actually, if you're Edward the Confessor, you're dying, you're looking for your heir, you don't have children of your own, the son of your cousin and closest friend is quite a likely candidate, isn't it? So we don't know for sure, but it is very possible that Edward did choose William. Certainly that's what William's saying. And the final one, which is really interesting, William used it to label Harold as an oath breaker. So an oath is like a promise breaker, which in Saxon times was a huge deal. You did not want to be a promise breaker. And what's really interesting, it says in the Bible that if you break a promise sworn on holy relics, God will pluck out your eye. And we know in 2 years there's going to be 1066 where Harold possibly ends up with an arrow in his eye. And you can see the picture there from the Bear Tapestry. The Normans say that's what happened. Harold's killed with an arrow in his eye. So Harold the Oathbreaker getting punished by God for breaking his promise. So next lesson, we've got one more lesson before we get into Hastings and 1066. But one more lesson, we'll get really close and we'll look at what goes on again with the Godwinson family.